Hello, everybody. Welcome, insiders. And this is an insider-only event today. So it's just us. Happy to see you. Justin Rivers here, Chief Experience Officer, welcoming you with our founder and leader-in-chief, Michelle Young, who is also the host of the Secrets of New York podcast, who is going to walk us through our Manhole cover podcast today. She's going to do a presentation. We're also going to see a clip from a documentary featured in the podcast. As always, just a couple of pre-flight things to know now that we're on Livestorm. If you wouldn't mind putting questions in the question function, that would be great. It makes it easier than picking them out of the chat, but please feel free to chat with each other and one another right here. Also, as always, if you're having audio or visual issues with sound or visual, just refresh the page. Livestorm brings you right back in. You don't have to re-register or click another link. And of course, say hello. Richard, it's good to see you from Florida. I just talked to you, Richard. Sylvia, hello from Woodside, Queens. Klaus, hello again. Good to see everybody. Joe from London. So great to have you all back today. Hello, Robin. Just talked to you as well. Good morning. Howie from New Jersey by way of Brooklyn. Howie, I've said this before, I'm Brooklyn by way of Jersey, so we flipped. Arlene from NYC, great to have you. Always good to see everybody. I see we have a poll.
I created a poll.
There you go. So there is a poll, and it is who has listened to episode 3. So go ahead and fill that poll out. We will look at the data as it comes in. So far, Not Yet is winning by 1 vote.
Here's your 1 vote.
There you go. And we'll refer to that. Feel free to keep going and answering the poll. So, Michelle.
Yeah.
The podcast. So it's been a lot of fun, right? Since the last time we talked to the insider group. And how did the launch go?
Great. We got a really great response. In the last presentation at the launch party, I showed some of the tweets we got, including someone that said they wanted to mainline this podcast, which is a term that I kind of had to look up.
Yeah.
Revealing my age-ish. No, but we've had lots of listens, and we are in the top 15 to 20% of podcasts already, just a month in. So pretty excited about the results, and it's been really fun putting together all the episodes and getting to work with you, Justin. And for this, we actually went out, quote unquote, into the field. So
we did go into the field, and it was a lot of fun, especially since it's been kind of a bleak winter.
Yeah, it was freezing, but it was
freezing, and we had to wait because we had it planned a couple of weeks in a row, but it just kept snowing. But we did eventually get out there. And that's huge. I mean, the numbers have been really great with the launch of the podcast, knowing like what we know about the podcast sort of audience and industry. So, and I think a big part of that is also having an audience like insiders. So thank you guys very much for helping to make the launch of Secrets of New York a success.
And so, if you haven't listened to the podcast yet, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the link Justin sent a little bit up, secretsnewyork.com has all the other podcast players that you can get. It's really basically available on any podcast.
There you go. And I'll repost the link at the end of the presentation as well. But why don't we, first we have another exciting announcement, right?
So we have a new website.
Yes.
We've been building it for the last month, and we are super excited. Would love to see some chats if you like the new website or if you've played around with it. It was time to get a new look and improve a bunch of functionalities. But beyond the editorial changes, the big thing we wanted to do, this is our new tours page. But the big thing we wanted to do with this redesign is to have a specific hub for insiders. So before, as you know, it was like a page within our editorial site, and you had to kind of go to like the insiders in the menu, drop down and see the functions. And we wanted to make it really clear what Insiders is about and to make it easy for you guys to find stuff. So now if you can, the website is the same, untappedcities.com/insiders, but when you go there, it looks like this. And you can get to your account really quickly, get to the video archive, see the upcoming events. And we have plans for more on here. We're hoping to put a kind of forum.
Yes.
We wanted to make it a cool forum and like not a message board. So we are investigating what kind of the best options are. And I'm sure there will be more ideas to come. So if you've got ideas about what you would like to see in your new Insiders Hub, we'd love to hear about it. So
yeah. I'm so excited about the idea of sort of having a forum, because our insiders are always so generous with information. I'm always getting emails from insiders about pictures that they have and sort of ideas that they have. So it's great in this hub that we have.
Yeah, I mean, we have the Facebook group, but it's kind of like an unwieldy thing to manage sometimes. So I feel like the forum would be great.
And I'm so not a Facebook person as
everybody. I know. We made Justin join Facebook, but he's like, he's like a ghost.
I am a ghost. Someday I'll get into it. But, well, yeah, it's great. It looks really, really wonderful. Hey, Beth, good to see you. So far, comments. Sylvia says it looks great. Klaus says excellent idea, the new site. So, and Howard Weber agrees with Klaus. Stanley Zucker from Lower East Side came in. Shelley from Columbus, Ohio. Great to see everybody. And
I used to live in Columbus. 2004, 2006, I worked for Abercrombie & Fitch in their corporate office.
Right, you have some really great stories about working for Abercrombie & Fitch too. I love those stories. But
actually, I still say we. If I talk about a we, like I mean Abercrombie & Fitch. It's so long ago, but like it's like my first job, and they've got me by the brain, you know.
Yeah, no, whatever. Yeah, you're so indoctrinated at your first job with like. Like ways to speak and the ways I'm the same way.
I know, but especially that place. I mean, like that's like a whole episode about like life at Abercrombie & Fitch.
We should do one day. People are still coming in and saying hi. Elliot, a former New Yorker, now in Vegas. Thomas, hello from Atlanta, and Shelley with what a great coincidence. There you go. I know, Columbus, Ohio. But let's talk about Manhole covers. Let's talk about some of the fun that we had putting this episode together and that you had making it as well. So I guess we'll start with the Minetta story, which I know you and I were talking as you were putting together the podcast as to, where's a really great spot. Like if I wanted to talk and do an interview about like podcasts, and we went out into the field, and I remember because of the weather, you were thinking you would just come to my neighborhood and maybe we'd walk around Prospect Park and find a couple. I said, no. I said, our coffee tour begins at Minetta, at 6th Avenue and Minetta Street. And I talk about the Minetta stream or brook. It's interchangeable. And, we got to do the Steve Duncan thing. We got to put the light down there and we got to shine it in and we could see the Minetta. And you were sold. You were like, yeah, all right, good, great. Let's do it. So.
Yeah. And actually, I do want to back up that we did this podcast episode because all of you guys voted last time.
Right. Exactly.
That you wanted this specific topic. So, and then I remembered, I don't know if I remembered during that podcast, but I remembered I had written a 20-page paper in grad school about manhole covers. So it was like a perfect topic that I didn't know about, that I didn't think of initially. So thank you guys for that. But yeah, so we came to Minetta, and, it's been a long time since I've actually been on one of Justin's tours. I can remember like Dutch New Amsterdam in the cold with my parents a long time ago.
It was the inaugural Dutch New Amsterdam tour.
Yeah, so I've actually never been on your coffee tour, and so I did not know that you stopped at the manhole covers here. So if you haven't heard the podcast, I'm going to show you some pictures. But so this is not a picture we took when we went together. This looks like it's like springtime.
Yeah, much nicer.
It was like freezing, so you'll see that later. Let's see. So this is the one. This looks like it's the one on Minetta Lane, maybe.
Yeah, it might be Minetta Lane. This is not Minetta Street. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, if you had a chance to go on a tour with Steve Duncan, he's sort of this underground specialist. This is kind of what it would look like. Everyone crowding around manhole covers, but he would open one, and you need like a special tool to open manhole covers because they're so heavy. And actually, after we posted this episode, someone on Instagram commented that her great-grandfather invented that tool, which greatly sped up utility work because it used to take several people to lift a manhole cover. But with the tool, you just need one person. So that was a fun fact that I didn't know before I did the episode. And so, yeah, you would like peer into manhole covers. He'd have a flashlight, and he'd lift one. So down there, you can see what used to be the Minetta Stream. And here's another manhole. It's a different one, I think. And Justin in the episode talks a little bit about the Minetta Stream. So do you want to say a few words about that? But don't reveal too much because we want people to listen.
No. And actually, I'll do there was more I really wanted to say about it, but it was less manhole and more Minetta, because Minetta is a really important waterway. It's sort of, I always call it the beating heart of Greenwich Village, because Greenwich Village sort of began its settlement around there. And also, I think one of the things people don't readily realize about Minetta is that it's not, and I did say a little bit of this in the podcast, it's not like they just they ran a stream, or they built the street over a stream, and it's sort of like bucolic down there, and they ran the stream through the sewer system. They had to, because it was flooding basements, especially the NYU Law Building. I think it pumps about 5 gallons of the Minetta Brook out of its basement on a daily basis. But the reason why the coffee tour starts there is because it was for a little while a source of drinking water, but it wasn't a great source of drinking water for the original inhabitants of Greenwich Village, even back before it was known as the Negroes Causeway, because of all the black settlement along it. And one of the things that New Yorkers really needed to come up with was a suitable beverage to drink during the day, which either had to be fermented, which was basically, it was called must, which was like a really gross type of like watered down beer, which women and children drank also throughout the day. But then, tea and coffee could be boiled, and that made water drinkable, in case there was bacteria, or in case there was, just not great stuff in it. So the reason why I like to start the coffee tour there is because it's like, imagine before coffee in New York, you had to drink this really gross type of beer called must. And the Minetta Brook was probably in some way associated with it. So, but again, it all ties back to the idea of having safe, consumable drinking water for a population.
Cool. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is me and Justin. He was shining a flashlight for me to see the stream down below. So we didn't lift the manhole cover on that visit, but
no.
And so here's like kind of a sampling. I think we mentioned in the podcast, but that it was just super fascinating to be here because you got to see the evolution of really the sewer manhole cover on these couple streets. So here we've got on the right is the former DPW, and the left is like the kind of manhole cover that you all know. You can see how it was like full of salt. So pictures are kind of funky. But this is the one we found, which we actually have never seen before because it just says sewer. And Justin noticed that. They usually say NYC sewer, right? And so that was kind of fun. And maybe they're more common. We just hadn't thought about it, but we saw it here. And then there was, I think, 2 of these DPW ones, which we really like because it has this kind of Victorian lettering. I actually think the pattern around it looks like cobblestone. So this is not on Minetta, but I took this picture somewhere else. But the same ones are there as well. So that was pretty fun. And then around that area, you'll also find the old subway manhole covers. And Justin, you want to say
what? One of my favorite things to do now, and actually this was even before we did the manhole covers, is to sort of trace a line on the street and see if they have the individual original company covers on them. So I was a couple of months ago, I was actually waiting to do an in-person insider event at 90 Sands Street in Dumbo. And right outside 90 Sands, I'm pretty sure like the queue and the end run right under that building, right off of the bridge. And I was standing on top of a BMT manhole cover, and I went, oh my God, yeah, right. I mean, there has to be IRT and BMT covers. So, BMT standing for the Brooklyn Manhattan Transit Company, Interborough Rapid Transit Company. So when Michelle and I went to the village, I said, I want to stand over the BDF line and see if we could find an IND. But then I realized that's dumb, because at that point it was just known as sort of rapid transit, or New York City Rapid Transit, the NYCRT, which is then, of course, we found a whole bunch. And there's even a whole bunch in my neighborhood since I live on the F line as well. So usually later IND lines are going to be Rapid Transit NYC. RTNYC.
Cool. So in the podcast episodes, we kind of go through the history of these kind of cast iron covers, and the forerunner of the manhole cover is really the coal hole cover. And you'll see these really a lot in London. There are some left in New York City, depending on what neighborhood you're in. So I took this picture in Brooklyn Heights, and it looks like it's a patented cover made on Center Street in Manhattan. Do we see a year?
1856.
That's
so
pretty early. Yeah.
Pretty early days.
I mean, and that makes sense because coal was being used to heat homes. And so people would lift these kind of things, and you would find them near houses and such. Then we also cover the oldest manhole covers in New York City. So I guess we're not counting the coal hole. We're counting the ones that are like literally manholes, right?
Yeah.
So this one is the oldest known, and I show you some context pictures here because we've got the Port Authority diagonally from us, and straight ahead is the New York Times. So it's not a very charming location for the alleged oldest manhole cover, but here it is in front of the hummus and pita shop. And here's a close-up. And really one of the reasons it has survived is because it's on the sidewalk and it's not in the street. So there used to be another one in Soho behind the Puck building. A lot of people probably may have seen that. And it's quite a charming location there. So people knew about that one, but people don't really talk about this one. So I was kind of excited to go here. And I came here like early pandemic in a car, jumped out, took a picture, got a bunch of weird looks from the people hanging around. I know, it's like you get weird looks from people who are like just like loitering around the Port Authority with the stuff that we're doing. Yes, Beth, there's like a bunch of the Croton covers in Central Park.
Because Stanley Zucker actually sent me a picture of one a couple days ago.
Yeah, because the aqueduct went through and actually goes under the Met. It's like a story I'm working on, actually. It's pretty fun. And then if you live near Harlem, there's one in Thomas Jefferson Park. So this is a little bit older. It's 4 years older. So yeah, the last one was 1862. This one's 1866. And again, this is on a sidewalk, so it's still with us. It's pretty exciting. A reader sent me this picture. It's near Museum of City, New York. So this is probably on the Central Park side. And it's notable, I think, because it's quite fancy looking. So it's got that Victorian lettering. I really like this one. And all around New York, you'll actually find remnants of this first aqueduct system. And we needed an aqueduct system because we were running out of clean water to drink. And we talk in the episode about Collect Pond and how that got super polluted. And that was one of, the main drinking sources for Manhattan for like 100 years. And so the Croton aqueduct system was built to bring in fresh water. And so you'll find like gatehouses. This is behind Columbia. You'll find the original remnants of the original reservoir, which is at Bryant Park. That's now, you can see the stones inside the New York Public Library. And then of course, High Bridge was the aqueduct. So that's what brought it in. And now we can walk on the High Bridge as well. So it's kind of fun to track down these former remnants of the Croton aqueduct system. And then there have been more water systems built since. Anything to add, Justin?
And yeah, no, actually, I always like to tell people, if you, especially really adventuresome New Yorkers who are looking for a little bit of an outing related to the Croton Aqueduct, there's a really great piece of very small park in the Bronx. If you take the D to almost the end of the line by the Edgar Allan Poe House, there is an aqueduct park, which they built a walkway, which sort of runs in between all the buildings by the Grand Concourse on the remnants of the old aqueduct. And it's a really, it's in the middle of the Bronx. It's high density. A lot of the times it's only used by the area neighborhoodies to sort of get back and forth without having to deal with streetlights. But it's a really neat historical piece of the aqueduct. And I tried to follow it as long as I could, hoping that I'd eventually get to High Bridge, like follow the whole thing down. But it gets cut off down by the old NYU campus. There's a whole bunch of, I forgot which highway cuts into it, but it's a really neat aqueduct remnant.
And actually, Pete Tannen, one of our insiders, who I believe is here, has written us a piece about a reservoir, the Jerome Park Reservoir. So that's coming out next week. Pretty exciting.
Oh, yeah. I think Pete's here.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some guests on this episode, as we do with every episode. And a few years ago, I came across this documentary called Cast in India. And it's about why you'll see the words "Made in India" on New York City sewer. And these New York City sewers run by Department of Environmental Protection. So they do water, they do sewer, and a bunch of, and not just them, but they just have a lot of manhole covers in New York City. So they're very present, and many of them do say "Made in India." So I interviewed the woman who made this documentary, Natasha Raheja, and she is a professor and anthropologist at Cornell University. And she had moved to New York from Texas and noticed the "Made in India" and was fascinated. And I think it's a really good example of when people transplant themselves to New York, they notice things that New Yorkers miss because we just see it all the time. And that's the same thing happened with Tom Fruin, whom we interviewed for the water tower episode. He said the same thing, and he noticed the water towers because he just wasn't from here. So I'm going to show you a clip. It's the trailer to "Made in India," Cast in India, and then we can talk a little bit about that. So let's see. Let's see if this works. First time.
You're a pro.
So let me get back to our presentation. So the documentary is really fascinating. I think it's about 30 minutes, and it's in a style where there's no narrative, and there's the main sound is actually the sound of the factory, and you see the process really from start to finish, from the raw materials that are brought in from the nearby area. And there's a lot of iron production and coal production in the area. So they bring in the raw materials, they fire, that's the iron, and then they put it into the castings. And then you kind of see the process of like how they finish that up. One of the things I didn't really get to discuss in the podcast because of length is the conditions inside those factories. So you got a little bit of a glimpse, but basically people are barefoot or in flip-flops. They're shirtless for the most part because it's super hot, especially near the kiln. And I'm sure it's quite corrosive and polluted. And so it's just like a real contrast to like when it arrives here, what the disconnect that we have. So you can watch the whole thing on YouTube, and Justin just sent the link.
Yes,
but it kind of really places you in terms of like the worldwide production of things, how one thing gets from one to another. And at one point, and I mention it in the episode, but a man is singing, and what he's singing translates to something like, "Don't go abroad and leave me behind." And it was just so poignant at that moment. And I asked the director whether, the workers had comments about the fact that it was going abroad and things like that. And she mentioned that it wasn't like an active part of the conversation, but they were definitely aware of where their stuff was going. And it's not just New York City stuff that's made there. It's really cities across everywhere. So yeah, Justin, anything else about the documentary or the process?
Well, I think, what's interesting is, obviously India has a really strict or has, and still dealing with a caste system, CASTE.
Yeah.
I think that there was also sort of a commentary in this about who is doing this work and, what level culturally in India that they are in, because as you can see, this is not by any stretch of the imagination like glamorous. It's very, intricate yet hard, dirty work that is done for things that come to, sort of very metropolitan, very culturally elite cities around the world. And yeah, I think we had a comment that came in from Thomas, who lives in Decatur, and he says that Georgia, who says he's made in India. And yeah, these are all made over there by a very, very small subgroup of people. It's very interesting. So.
Yeah, and it's just like the volume of manhole covers that need to be made by some of these agencies is so large that they've had to outsource.
Right.
And actually, the DEP itself doesn't order these things. It's either DCAS or one of the other agencies is responsible for the sourcing. But Con Ed, on the other hand, actually told me that they now get all of their, or nearly everything in the US. So they have a main foundry that they work with in Michigan, but they've also worked with a foundry out here in Long Island. So yeah, the sourcing of it is a really fascinating thing, and highly recommend that you watch. So kind of for the rest of this, I just wanted to run through some fun manhole covers that I documented. Yeah, not DCAS. It's I can't remember. Sorry. Department of City Services. I can't remember. So yeah, by 1874, we've got here Department of Public Works that was managing the sewer. So this is not too long after the Croton ones that we discovered. And then near where I live in Brooklyn is a manhole cover for the Catskill water manhole. And I don't think there are a lot of these at all. That's a pretty unique looking thing. And then right next to it is the water hydrant manhole. I'm sorry, water hydrant cover. It's not a manhole. And then I wanted to talk about this in the episode, but I didn't have time. This is the Millennium Con Ed cover. So they worked with the artist, what is his name? I have it here. Karim Rashid. And I will read his quote about what he intended with this. And he won a competition that Con Ed had managed. This is the perfect medium to express the message that energy and information flowing in a superhighway beneath our feet are making the world a smaller place. The morphing of the grid shows how the potential and importance of this vital link is growing. So this was in the year 2000, and so kind of talking about, like, I guess, the explosion of telecom. So Con Ed is not really telecom, but I think it kind of conjures that the underground world is getting more and more complicated. Whereas it was just water and sewer, now it's like telecom and really anything else. So there aren't that many of these ones left, and I had been really wanting to photograph this one for a long time, and suddenly I came across one, and I was jubilant.
It's really beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. You know, they get replaced over time, so they don't last forever. So So this is the classic NYC sewer. It's the one in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I talk about in the podcast. I like the print on it. This one is unique. It says Borough of, what does it say, Justin?
Borough of Manhattan, Bureau of Sewer.
Bureau of Sewers, Borough of Manhattan.
Yeah.
That's the only one really I've seen ever of that.
I've never seen anything like this. When you showed it to me before, I was like, that's amazing. I've never seen it.
This is a Park and Recs one. It's also a drain, but then here's a Parks and Rec that's not a drain. So I like the logo on it. This is not a manhole cover, but it was in my folder of manhole covers. And so I just thought this was funny. So I threw this in here. Apparently, the Borough President of Manhattan has a topographical bureau cover somewhere out there. So if anyone knows what that is, I haven't dug into it yet, but I wanted to show it. Okay, so you see a lot of these around with different things on it. Oh, Joe, the Millennium cover, I want to say I was like in the Chelsea area, but I really don't remember. I'll try to see if the picture has like GPS coordinates on it. So Manhattan DPW, Department of Public Works, you'll see a lot of different ones, and they'll have different letters. Instead of DPW, they might say something else for the various agencies that they were connected to. If anyone ever has been to the General Seminary in Chelsea, they have their own manhole covers that are very beautiful. So this one is in front of the Highline Hotel, and that building used to be part of the seminary and was sold off. And I really love this one because it looks like it says Manhattan born. Obviously, the N, if you look closely, is repeated. So BOR, I actually haven't figured out yet what the R stands for. I'm assuming it's Bureau of something. So if anybody wants to chip in with what they think it might be. It's not in the official list of abbreviations in New York that you might find on Wiki. And then one of the things we talk about in this episode is Lawrence Weiner's Public Art Fund project, in which he installed 19 of these manhole covers that say in direct line with another and the next. And this was also in the year 2000. And Public Art Fund, Manhattan Borough.
Yeah,
it was that simple. It was that simple.
We might have overthought that one, Michelle.
Yeah. For years, I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, I think we overthought it.
I even looked up like patents. I looked up like the patent history. And so someone owns the patent to Manhattan born, but not Manhattan BOR, obviously. So, okay. And so Public Art Fund partnered with Con Ed to make this manhole. So I interviewed the woman who was in charge of cultural affairs at Con Ed at the time and was in charge of getting this executed. And so Public Art Fund has worked with Con Ed many times. So if you guys were around to see that waterfall, Olaf, what's his name? Erickson? No, something like that. The waterfalls under the Brooklyn Bridge and stuff. Con Ed had to help there because they needed to get water to the water's edge, which is actually more difficult than it sounds. Fresh water. And so they helped with that. Sometimes they help with they used to help with cranes when they needed to install public art in places. And so with this, Con Ed worked with the Roman Stone Company. That's the foundry on Long Island. And they got his design to spec for manhole cover production and then had them fabricated in India. And if you go to the Public Art Fund's page, there's actually a picture of Lawrence sitting on his couch with a coffee table of this. And I really, really want that. Such a good idea. Indestructible, even.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
So yeah, that's kind of stuff that some of the stuff that we cover in the podcast. Eliason, thank you. Thank you, Diana. I don't know if you guys have questions that I can answer or Justin can answer. I'll take down this slide. Justin, do we know how to stop sharing screen?
You just hit X. Just exit out on the top of the screen.
Great.
There you go.
Yeah.
Super simple. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, let us know. And also, what's next, Michelle?
Next.
Topic.
Next is going to be abandoned subway stations, of which Justin is one of our experts. I'll also interview some other people, of course, in addition to Justin, but very excited about that.
Yeah. I am too, because then we're also doing an abandoned subway talk stations, which is not like the underground subway tour. For those of you who have been on the many iterations of the virtual underground subway tour, this is only going to cover abandoned, and it's also a lot of stations we do not talk about in the underground subway tour. This has been an excuse for me to talk to get more into some of the stations we neglect, and also the podcast too. That'll be great.
Oh, so actually, it is DCAS, Department of Citywide Services. No, Department of Citywide Administrative Services does the buying for the manhole covers.
There it is. So Lisa had a question. I was wondering if somebody was going to ask this question. So Lisa asked, how many manhole covers are there in NYC?
Yeah, so we tried to estimate that. So one of the things we talk about is the famous interview questions that are related to manhole covers. So the first one is, why are manhole covers round? So we learned that if they are not round, they can kind of be inserted into the hole in any shape, in kind of other angles, and could fall in. So if they're square, rectangular, oval, there are ways to get that in. So for safety, they're round, and manhole covers sit on like a lip. So it's really like kind of like an outside casing that gets put into the ground, and there's like a lip inside, and then the manhole cover rests on that lip. So basically it won't fall through. And also it's sort of ease of putting in a manhole is that you can put it in from any direction.
Yeah.
But then the other question, so that was supposedly a question that Microsoft used to use. I feel like it's like urban legend at this point. But then a Goldman Sachs question allegedly was, how many manhole covers are there in New York City, which is a very consulting question, and kind of like brought me back to bad memories of college and trying to interview for consulting firms and being like, how many checking accounts are there in America? Yeah. And so I think you're always supposed to answer those questions with logic, like how many streets might there be in New York City multiplied by the average number of manhole covers per street. But I decided to try to ask various agencies how much they have. So I'm still adding them up, but Con Ed has around 250,000, probably a little less. They gave me the number of 265,000 structures. So that includes like kind of like electrical boxes, various things, but the majority of them, I believe, are manholes. And the woman I interviewed from Con Ed also says there's about 250,000 from when she was working there. Then DEP tells me that they have 350,000. And so it used to be that Con Ed had the most number of manholes, but now I guess DEP wins. So, and it makes sense. I feel like we see more of those NYC sewer manhole covers than anything else.
Yeah.
So more to go. I mean, next I should ask like Verizon, and Verizon has like a ton, because Verizon used to be New York Telephone Company. They also bought the ECS subway manhole, which I thought I had in this presentation. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a good question, but I think it'll take a long time to get a definitive, just because the departments themselves barely know.
They don't really know. I'm going to estimate around 1 million, because if we get to like, or maybe less than 1 million, but I think there's a bunch of like New York Telephone stuff and Verizon stuff. So, and subway stuff. So let's say 1 million.
There's a lot of, I mean, MTA controls quite a bit from the systems too.
All right. Other questions?
Yeah, I think, did we get another question in? Manhole covers remind me of the illuminated sidewalk lights. Any plans for a podcast on the illuminated sidewalk lights?
Maybe. Yeah, like the ones in Soho and stuff. That could be fun. Oh, Joe has a question. I think in the podcast you said there's still a wiener cover somewhere, Union Square. Yeah, I have to verify that, because that's what Lisa said, the woman from Con Ed, and she thinks that one is still there. So actually we need to go and see. How long before we have to refer to them as maintenance covers? I don't know. I feel like a West Coast city actually officially changed the name, right? From manhole covers to something else. I think I read that in the news somewhere.
Oh, I didn't hear that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't talk about that in the podcast. But what I did learn is that West Coast, much more advanced in terms of manhole cover design. They've been doing like art on manhole covers for a really long time. So LA and some other places. Seattle has, I think, good stuff. So New York actually has to catch up.
Yeah. And Stanley just posted a link to Berkeley that changed it to maintenance holes.
All right.
So I'm sure New York will not be far behind then on that. Although it's gonna be tough to switch in our minds that. Robin said there used to be a Millennium cover in Times Square in front of the recruiting center. Oh, in front of the Army recruiting center? Oh, interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
I so never look down in Times Square. It's just like up right ahead. That's pretty cool. Any other questions or comments? All right. Yeah. So again, a little bit of Michelle and I were talking about this a couple of days ago. We said, this will be like a nice little lunchtime break.
Yeah.
So not a full hour, but also just nice to have a nice insider event with you guys. And then next week, I will be back with you on Tuesday to do Art in Grand Central. And I am now blanking on the rest of the week. So hold on.
Gonna pull it up.
Oh, you're going to pull it up? Now that we have Nicole in charge of schedule, I'm like, all right, what do I need to get prepared for? And I'm there.
Well, we have something on Carole King.
Oh, right. We have the Carole King talk, which I'm very...
and then also Christopher Payne's Made in NYC, New York's Factories. That is going to be great.
Oh, that's going to be awesome.
Christopher Payne is a friend of mine from the early days of Untapped, and he's an architectural photographer. You probably know his work from North Brother Island. He's most famous for those pictures, but also his pictures of the Steinway factory. And the Steinway factory photography led to his new series on just like factories in general. So he's been documenting factories all around the country and in New York City, including we had a story today on Untapped about the MTA's overhaul shops. And so his work is really incredible. He's very methodic about his photography. It takes him a really long time to set up a single shot. And so when he goes into these places, it's really with the understanding and partnership of whoever he's working with. So whether it's Steinway or the MTA, that he has this process and he might be there for a really long time setting up stuff. And he's trained as an architect. And so you can see that influence in his work. And I remember when I first met him and talked to him, like we definitely had like just kind of like a real interesting connection about cities and work and like the work he does. And my mother is a pianist. And so she had brought me to the Steinway studio where you can buy pianos, that showroom that used to be on 57th. And so there's just like a lot of connection. He documented also a bunch of abandoned psych centers, including the one my mother worked at. So it was just this kind of like weird thing where I felt like so much of like the past, whether I was alive for it or not, kind of like came together in his work. So I'm excited to have him share his work with you, which is connected to a new exhibition he has with his gallery, the Ben Ruby Gallery, about documenting factories. So.
Yeah, so that's coming up in not next week, but the week after. So we've got really good programs coming up.
Cool.
And happy to have you guys there. We hope you all have a really good weekend. And as always, stay safe. This video will be up in the archives, maybe even by the end of the day. I'm all caught up. Crystal Palace just went. Black Baseball History just went. So I think this afternoon we'll edit this one and get that one up too. For those of you, cool. As Marcy Davis said, we need to make binge watching insider videos a thing. I was like,
I love that.
I'm into it. That's fine.
Let's keep that quote.
Yeah, exactly. I have it actually. She texted it to me. So everybody have a really great weekend. Always love your comments and suggestions, and have a great day, guys. Stay safe. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Great to see you guys.
Bye.